Okay, so today we are going to be watching various clips on YouTube, trying to learn about what's happening with the recent BRICS conference that's just gone down, and I think it's in South Africa, where Johannesburg, where it's happened. In case you're unfamiliar with it, BRICS is sort of those second world countries, the largest economies, all kind of trying to combine together to maybe be an alternative to the G7 or take on U.S. dominance. So we have Brazil, Russia, India, China, and the S stands for South Africa. So I have a few clips for you guys. Hopefully you enjoy what we're about to look at. Let's go. This first clip we have here is from Reuters talking about how at the 11th hour, BRICS talked about an expansion. Let's check it out.
A deal to expand BRICS appeared stuck in 11th hour negotiations on Wednesday. South Africa earlier had said the group of developing countries had agreed to a mechanism for new members, paving the way for dozens of nations to sign up.
Now, it's interesting because my understanding is they don't even have a website here, but they do have these organizations and they're talking about bringing in additional members. What's this organization? Who's putting together the application? I'd like more details on that, please.
We need to use the BRICS Plus cooperation well and accelerate the expansion process. Let more countries join the BRICS family, pool wisdom, and gather strength to make global governance more fair and reasonable.
So Xi wants more people to join?
While all BRICS members had publicly expressed support for growing the bloc, there had been divisions among the leaders about how much and how quickly. The group's members have economies that are vastly different in scale and governments that seem to have few foreign policy goals in common.
That's going to be the big issue, in my opinion, is we got these different economies. They've all got different goals. They all generally often don't like each other or don't trust each other. So there's going to be some challenges to putting this whole thing together. So there's a lot of work that has to be done in order for this whole thing to come together. And then ultimately, what are the goals that they're trying to accomplish? And I think many of us just kind of assume that this is going to be some sort of new currency so that they can deviate away from the U.S. dollar. But we'll see. Are they going to be able to trust each other enough to actually, create some sort of central account where they can clear transactions between each other? And that means that Russia's got to trust that India has access to their gold deposits and vice versa. It's going to be complicated. Who's going to be that independent third party who clears all those transactions and holds on to those sort of foreign reserves that they all trust? Okay, let's move on. Next one we have Putin wasn't at the conference. Let's see what CBC is saying about that.
South Africa didn't want to officially uninvite him from coming, but what he did is he delivered a video address that was played at the forum in front of the other leaders that were there in person.
Well, did they give him like a webcam or something so he could participate remotely?
When they started to play his video address, there was a large cheer from the crowd.
That's really interesting, and that tells you something about the sentiment towards Russia from these other countries. They apparently applauded Putin at this event. That's interesting.
South African officials say that around 40 nations have expressed interest in joining the BRICS.
It's like the hottest nightclub in town, and everybody wants an invite.
And a lot of the background talk leading up to this summit has really been about, pushing for a multipolar world and challenging what they see as the kind of the West dominance of global affairs. And also they really want to try to challenge the international markets and the reliance that they have on the American dollar.
There we go. CBC put it, this is really all about challenging the U.S. dollar. Who do you trust more than the U.S.? That's the problem. I do think that the U.S. going after Russia's foreign reserves after they invaded Ukraine, it really makes things a little bit interesting, and it's probably put a lot of countries on edge over just the power that the U.S. has over their economies when they can just effectively freeze their assets and seize their assets that are in foreign bank accounts. So here up next, let's take a look at Peter Zeihan, who's a political analyst. He's been on the Joe Rogan show at least once. I really enjoy this guy. I think he's got a lot of interesting takes. Let's hear what Mr. Zeihan has for us.
There are reasons for the BRICS to talk with China. It is a significant trading partner, but there's no reason for them to speak with one another. Brazil, aside from exports to China, doesn't trade with the rest of them at all. Same with South Africa, same with Russia. India is a special case, and if there's one country that doesn't like China, that would be India. And, every once in a while you'll hear them talking about forming a global currency, or a new alternate currency to challenge the dollar, and then they start talking about details and it all falls apart.
This is the goodies you get from Zihan, who thinks about these things. It's for China, this is about getting leverage over the U.S. when they have these trade negotiations.
Anyway, so the purpose of this summit is to bring in dozens of leaders from other countries and see if they can find something that they can all agree on. History suggests the answer will be no, and everyone is coming with their own list of grievances and desires.
There's something about Peter Zihan and these views that it almost feels a little bit like, remember Deep Thoughts with Jack Handey from SNL? If he wasn't on the screen and he just showed his background and they just had text going down, this would be intellectual property theft from Saturday Night Live. Let's continue.
The Russians want everyone to sign up with them and boycott the West until the West agrees to give them their way on Ukraine. The Chinese are hoping to get enough countries on board that they can then walk into Washington and demand trade concessions. They don't care about all the other countries. They just want them for themselves. The Indians are there because they are more of a classic non-aligned power. But as the Chinese become more rambunctious, the Indians have become more and more edging towards being in the American camp. So the normal rhetoric that you would expect to see out of the Indians just isn't there. The South Africans who are hosting are pretending to be neutral in all this and say they don't have an opinion. The Brazilians are very la-di-da.
All right, so he just told us his thoughts on the BRICS, effectively said what we said. It's the start of this disorganized idea where for China, it's about getting leverage over the U.S., and for India, they're okay with dabbling in different ideas. And for everybody else, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because they don't really trade with each other anyways. Now, if we're going to Zihan after the summit, where we're going to hear what he thinks of it.
The reason I'm even less optimistic this time around is because the interests of the groups that are showing up are far more diverse than anything that we had in the early post-colonial era back in the 60s and 70s.
So the 6 countries after the summit that the BRICS decided to bring in what were they? They were Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, Ethiopia, Argentina, and who did I miss? I only got 5. Oh, Egypt.
Chinese President Xi Jinping didn't even show up to some of the opening ceremonies where he was expected to give whole speeches. The Chinese don't see this as a useful vehicle except rhetorically.
That was kind of an interesting point there at the end. Apparently, Xi missed some of the places he was supposed to give speeches at. I don't know if those were different panels he was supposed to be on or events at the BRICS, but Xi basically didn't even show up at some of them. So that might indicate some of the level of seriousness here that there actually is behind the BRICS, which I know every gold bug and Bitcoiner out there wants to hear, that the BRICS is happening and we're definitely going to have this competing currency to the US dollar. But when you hear things like that, it certainly doesn't sound like we're going to have this complete dominant new currency. Okay, up next here, let's take a look at Peter Schiff's take. Peter Schiff's always fun to listen to. Let's hear what Peter Schiff has for us on the BRICS.
We are broke as a nation, and the inflation genie is out of the bottle. More than 10 years of reckless money printing. There's no way these rate hikes are going to do anything about that. So high inflation is here to stay, and it's going to get even higher. We wanted Russia to hold dollars because that benefits us. That keeps our prices down, that keeps our interest rates down, and then we punished Russia for doing exactly what we wanted them to do. Now, what kind of message are we sending to the rest of the world?
Russia has been getting rid of their US dollars for years. This isn't like a new thing. Check this graph out here. This is from Reuters. This is Russia's holdings of US treasuries, which has dwindled in recent years. Like you can see here that they went from almost $100 billion in US dollars down to like what could be all the way down to $4 billion by 2021. So this is before the US froze those assets. So I quite frankly, I don't know what the Peter Schiff's talking about here. Let's continue.
By not pushing for peace, we have allowed Russia to cozy up to China, which is our number one adversary, not Russia, unlike the left and the media try to lie to us.
Oh, the left media's tried to lie to us.
And more troubling is the economic war that could be waged against us in the future by these BRICS nations. That's what I'm worried about. We got to get Biden out of there. We've got to get some sort of control over this. Obviously, stop the runaway spending, but start talking peace and get this war over with so we can try to make up with Russia so they don't run and do this with BRICS.
We don't have all the facts here, and let's be honest about that, but the U.S. didn't really start this war. Ukraine wanted to join NATO. They were going through a process to apply. Russia said, oh, we don't like that. We're going to invade you. They made up some bullshit about the special operations for their military. They went in and they just basically started blowing up buildings and killing families. Okay, Peter, the U.S. is not perfect. They've created a lot of problems here. I actually think Biden's handled this one pretty well. I'm not a huge Biden fan, but I think given the hand of cards he was dealt, I think he's handled it pretty well.
We didn't have any wars when Trump was president. That was one of the things he got right. He kept us out of war. And as soon as Biden comes in, next thing you know, not only do we have a war, but we have the potential for a world war. I mean, who the hell wants to risk that? Over what? Over Ukrainian independence? This is nonsense.
So Peter, what were we supposed to do? Were we just supposed to allow for Russia to just go in and just totally obliterate Ukraine and hand them nothing? And the whole world's just supposed to watch the little kid get bullied by the big kid and do nothing? Is that what we're supposed to do? And then not expect that Russia's going to continue as crazy Putin starts to attempt to take over other countries? Great idea, Peter.
This war started last February. You're looking at a year and 7 months, and not once has our alleged commander-in-chief said, well, let's get the two to the bargaining table and I'm going to broker a peace deal to say, no, nothing.
How does that happen, Peter? Explain that to me. Does Ukraine just surrender and say, here's the keys to our country, take them, great leader Putin?
He wants endless war. He doesn't want peace. He doesn't care how many people die.
I don't even know why they're calling it a war. Russia went into Ukraine. If it were a war, Ukraine would be entering Russia.
Russians and Ukrainians, that are dying. That for what?
He's right. For what? For what? Because Russia decided that they wanted to go in and take over Ukraine.
Our dollar is dying. Our economy is dying, all thanks to Joe. Again, all roads lead back to Joe and his regime.
I don't see how that's Biden's fault. We got the Hill Western hegemony.
Well, this is the most historic gathering of the BRICS, which was founded in 2009 to democratize international trade and international institutions by fostering multipolarity.
So he seems to think that this was kind of put together, not necessarily for capital markets purposes and to sell financial securities, but it was actually done out of their own economic interests, despite the fact that it's been now been 14 years and nothing's been accomplished. But okay, let's continue. We have a visual capitalist here. This shows us this is visualizing the 2023 BRICS expansion. BRICS, a bloc of developing countries formed in 2010, is set to welcome 6 new members at the beginning of 2024. So how much is that going to expand their sort of dominance or their economic power, I should say? Oh, no, this is the share of global. It's going to now be at 29%. The population will now hit 46%. It will represent 43% of global oil production and 25% of total exports. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. You got to watch me learning about the BRICS. So hopefully you learned, well, I learned, and we all learned together about the BRICS, just sitting around, vegging out here, watching these YouTube clips. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. So guys, we just recently launched this channel and we noticed that 99.9% of our viewers are not subscribed. So if you enjoyed this video, we need your help in growing this channel. By subscribing, that would help us keep the lights on and make sure that our crews have jobs in these uncertain times. So please hit that subscribe button and we promise to make more quality videos that I'm sure you're going to love.